30 years ago, the Alpha King looked his pregnant Luna in the eyes and said, "You are too weak to stand at my side." Then he exiled her, barefoot and bleeding, into the snow. Tonight, under the same cruel moon, she returned at the head of an army of outcasts, with their 3-year-old son at her side, and silver fire in her veins. The kingdom that cast her out is starving. The king who broke her is on his knees. And the moon goddess herself just whispered, "Let it burn." This is not a second chance romance. This is the story of a woman who was told she was nothing, and made the entire world pay for believing it. Season 2 starts now. You won't look away. You won't dare. Chapter 1. The night the moon chose me. The full moon hung low and bloated, bleeding silver across the snow. I stood barefoot on the frost-dried stones of the packhouse courtyard, shivering in nothing but the thin silk shift Alaric had ripped from my shoulders the night he marked me. 3 months pregnant and already showing, I looked small next to the towering guards who gripped my arms. Alaric descended the steps like a god carved from winter itself, broad, cruel, beautiful. His black cloak snapped behind him, the royal crest of the Iron Fang pack glinting at his throat. His amber eyes didn't even flicker with regret. "Luna Alara," he announced to the silent crowd, voice ringing off the stone. "You have failed this pack in every conceivable way. You are barren of strength, barren of ferocity, barren of worth. From this night forward, you are exiled." A collective inhale rippled through the pack. Someone whimpered. No one spoke. My knees buckled, but the guards held me upright. I pressed a trembling hand to the faint curve of my belly. "Our son, conceived the night Alaric had dragged me to his bed and whispered that I was his forever." Forever had lasted exactly 91 days. "Alaric," I rasped, tasting blood where I'd bitten my tongue. "I carry your heir." His lip curled. A half-blood whelp from a half-blood Luna. The Iron Fang line will not be diluted by weakness. He turned his back on me. "Take her beyond the border stones. If she returns, kill her." The guards dragged me past rows of bowed heads. My best friend Mara stood in the front line, tears streaming, but she didn't move. Not one wolf met my eyes. The border stones loomed ancient monoliths carved with runes that burned cold when we crossed them. The guards shoved me forward. I fell hard, palms scraping, belly clenched in terror. Snow soaked the silk instantly. I crawled a few feet, then collapsed, sobbing into the frozen earth. "If this is your sacred bond," I screamed at the moon, "then take it back. I reject it. I reject him." The moon answered. A pillar of liquid silver slammed down around me, warm, alive, electric. The runes on the border stones exploded in white fire. Every wolf for miles dropped to their knees, throats raw with involuntary howls. The voice that filled my skull was ancient, feminine, vast as the night sky. "Little wolf, you were never weak." He was never worthy. Power poured into me like molten starlight. My spine cracked and reformed, stronger. My tears evaporated into steam. My heartbeat thundered with 2 rhythms, mine and the fierce, defiant drum of the child in my womb. Before we continue, kindly tell us where you are watching from, and don't forget to hit the subscribe button, because every day we have an amazing story that will make your day. The moon goddess curled around us both, a mother's arms made of fire and fury. "He will never kneel again," she promised. "Neither will you." I rose from the snow reborn, my hair whipped loose, glowing like molten platinum. My eyes went soft hazel, now burned pure silver. I looked back across the border. Alaric stood silhouetted on the ridge, staring, mouth open for the first time in his life. I smiled, slow and sharp, tasting vengeance on my tongue. 3 years later, Strike Kingdom rose from the wilds like a nightmare given stone and steel. Black basalt walls, silver banners snapping in the wind, forges that never slept. Rogues, exiles and broken wolves came to me by the hundreds. They called me the Silver Queen. They knelt willingly. Tonight the moon was full again, cruel and perfect. I stood on the war ridge in armor forged from meteor iron and moon-blessed silver. My son Kale, aged 3, stood at my side in miniature armor, silver fur already rippling beneath his skin, though he hadn't fully shifted yet. His tiny hand gripped mine, eyes twin eclipses, black shot through with starlight. Below us, the Iron Fang Kingdom starved. Drought, blight, Stillbirths every cursed, the goddess could rain down without breaking her own laws. Alaric's once mighty pack was a skeleton of itself. He waited on the same packhouse steps where he'd exiled me. Even from this distance, I saw the hollows in his cheeks, the tremor in his proud shoulders. He looked up, our eyes locked across the valley. My voice carried on the wind, amplified by the goddess herself. Alpha King Alaric of Iron Fang, I called, sweet as poisoned honey. Do you remember the night you called me weak? His head jerked, as though I'd struck him. I lifted one gauntleted hand. Silver fire danced above my palm, bright enough to eclipse the moon. The moon goddess sends her regards. I snapped my fingers. The sky split open. Rivers of silver flame poured down, precise as arrows. They struck the packhouse roof, the barracks, the granaries, every structure that had ever sheltered his pride. Wolves screamed and scattered. Alaric didn't move. He just stared at me, eyes wide, as the kingdom he'd traded me for burned beautifully. Kale tugged my hand. Mama, is the bad man scared now? I crouched, brushing a lock of silver hair from his forehead. Terrified, my love. A roar shattered the nitra. Desperate, Alaric shifted mid-stride, his massive black wolf leaping the burning courtyard toward the ridge. Even starved, he was magnificent. Muscle and fury and regret made flesh. He stopped 20 feet away, hackles raised, lips peeled back from fangs that had once marked my throat in passion. I stepped forward, armor creaking softly. The silver fire in my veins sang. Hello, mate, I whispered, letting the bond still there, still aching flare between us for the first time in 3 years. His whole body shuddered. I leaned in until my lips brushed the fur of his ear. You threw away the only thing that could have saved you. Then I kissed the air between us, tasting smoke and memory, and turned my back on him exactly as he once had to me. Behind me, Alaric howled the sound of pure devastation that shook the burning sky. I walked away, Kale's hand in mine, silver banners snapping overhead. The war had only just begun, and I was no longer the girl he exiled. I was the storm he'd begged the moon to send. Chapter 2. The mark that never faded. I walked away from the burning valley with my son's tiny hand in mine, and the taste of Alaric's broken howl still ringing in my ears. The snow swallowed the sound behind us. My warriors fell in step, silent, disciplined, proud. None of them dared speak until we passed beneath the obsidian arch of Strike Keep. Only then did Kale tug my gauntlet. Mama, why did the bad man cry? I knelt, brushing soot from his cheek. Because he finally saw what he lost. Little star. He considered this with solemn 3-year-old gravity, then nodded and ran ahead to find his nursemaid. The gates boomed shut behind us. I thought that was the end of it for the night. I was wrong. The bond snapped awake inside my chest like a whip crack of lightning. Sharp, possessive, furious. He was coming. I felt him cross the old border stones the way a woman feels a hand slide up her spine in the dark. Every hair on my body rose. My claws flexed without permission. Between my thighs, heat bloomed so sudden and fierce I had to grip the nearest pillar to stay upright. No, not after everything. I snarled, shoved the feeling down, and stormed toward my chambers. I would lock the doors, drown the bond in ice water, drink nightshade if I had to. Anything to keep him out. The snowstorm arrived first. It rolled down from the northern peaks like the goddess herself had opened her veins. Wind screamed, visibility died. My sentry scrambled to close the outer gates, but the blizzard swallowed the world in white. I stood on the high balcony, silver hair whipping, watching the storm devour the mountain pass. Somewhere out there, a black wolf was running straight into my teeth. Good, let him freeze. I turned to leave. A howl split the night, so close it vibrated in my bones. Alaric, he was already inside the outer wall. I flew down the stairs 3 at a time, armor half unbuckled, heart hammering with something that was not fear. My guards parted like water. I burst into the lower courtyard, just as the massive iron portcullis groaned upward against the wind. He came through alone. Snow clung to his black fur in sheets. His sides heaved. Blood froze in crimson streaks along his flank where silver fire had kissed him. His golden eyes locked on me across the courtyard and refused to let go. Then he shifted. Naked, magnificent, half dead from cold, and still the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. Moonlight carved every scarred, starved muscle into marble. His chest bore the faint scar of my old claiming mark, glowing faintly silver now, like the goddess herself refused to let it fade. He took one step, then another. Snow melted beneath his bare feet. "Ilara," he rasped, voice raw from the run. My name in his mouth was a blade and a prayer. I lifted a hand. 10 silver-tipped crossbows rose behind me, trained on his heart. "Stop." He stopped, 10 feet away, close enough that the bond roared between us like a living flame. I walked forward until the muzzles almost touched his chest, close enough to smell smoke and pine and him. "You have 10 seconds to explain why I shouldn't got you right here," I said softly. His gaze dropped to my throat, to the place where his mark still lived under my armor. Then lower, to the faint swell that had once carried his son. Hunger and agony warred across his face. "I felt him," he whispered. "Our son, he called me." I laughed, cold and sharp. "He's 3. He calls ravens pretty birds. You're delusional." Alaric's knees buckled, not from weakness, from the storm, from the bond, from the sight of me. He caught himself on one hand in the snow, head bowed, shoulders shaking. "I was wrong," he said to the ground. "I was cruel. I was blind. I thought strength was breaking things. I didn't know it was surviving them." I stared at the proud slope of his back, at the way the snow refused to settle on his skin, as if even winter couldn't bear to touch him without permission. Something inside me cracked, just a little. Then the wind shifted. A child's voice carried from the open archway behind me, small but clear as bells. "Daddy." Cale stood on the bottom step in his nightshirt, silver hair tousled, clutching his stuffed wolf. His eyes, black ringed in starlight, were fixed on Alaric with pure, impossible recognition. The bond detonated. Alaric's head snapped up. A sound tore out of him, half sob, half growl, something no wolf should ever make. He tried to stand, but his legs wouldn't hold. He crawled forward through the snow instead, palms bleeding, tears cutting clean tracks down his soot-streaked face. "Daddy," Cale repeated, uncertain now, taking one tiny step. I moved without thinking, placing myself between them, hand on my son's shoulder. "Don't," I warned Alaric, voice shaking with rage and something worse. "Don't you dare touch him." Alaric froze inches away, trembling so hard the snow vibrated around him. His hand lifted, palm up, beseeching. "Please," he breathed. "Just let me see him once. I'll leave after. I swear on the moon, I'll leave." Cale peered around my leg. "He's cold, Mama." Of course he was cold. He was naked in a blizzard, bleeding from half a dozen burns, and still crawling toward us like we were the only warmth in the world. I looked at my son's earnest little face, then at the broken king on his knees in my courtyard. The storm howled louder, as if the goddess herself leaned in to watch what I would do next. I made my choice. Inside, I snapped to my guards. "All of you, close the doors." They hesitated for one heartbeat, then obeyed. The courtyard emptied. The portcullis slammed down. Only the 3 of us remained under the screaming sky. I stepped aside. Cale ran. He threw himself at Alaric with the fearless abandon of a child who had never been taught to fear. Tiny arms wrapped around a neck, thick with muscle and scars. Alaric made a broken sound and crushed our son against his chest, burying his face in silver hair, breathing him in like oxygen after years underwater. His massive frame shook with silent sobs. I stood frozen, fists clenched so tight my gauntlets creaked. After a long moment, Alaric lifted his head. His eyes met mine over Cale's shoulder, gold and silver, and utterly devastated. "Thank you," he whispered. I couldn't speak. The bond was singing, vicious and sweet, wrapping around my ribs like chains made of fire. Cale pulled back, cupped Alaric's stubbled cheek with both hands, and announced solemnly, "You're hurt. Mama fixes hurts." Then he took Alaric's bloody hand and started dragging him toward the keep, barefoot through the snow, chattering about warm milk and bandages. Alaric let himself be led like a lamb. I followed, heart thundering, every step a war between mercy and murder. Behind us, the storm kept raging, and somewhere high above, the moon watched, cruel and pleased. Chapter 3. Silver Blood, Black Lies. The storm didn't let up. It screamed against the keep like it wanted in, like it knew what sins were being committed under my roof tonight. I walked 3 paces behind them the entire way. Kale barefoot, nightshirt flapping, utterly fearless, tugged Alaric by one massive, blood-streaked hand through the torchlit corridors. Alaric led him, the king of Ironfang, naked and frost-burned. Allowed a 3-year-old to lead him past rows of my staring warriors, like a prisoner on a child's leash. No one laughed. No one even breathed too loud. We reached the royal wing. I dismissed the guards with a sharp jerk of my chin. The doors boomed shut behind us. Warmth hit like a wall. Braziers blazed. Furs covered the floors. Moonlight poured through the high-arched windows, turning everything silver in shadow. Kale released Alaric's hand and ran to the side table, dragging over the healer's kit that was almost as big as he was. Sit, he ordered the former Alpha King, pointing imperiously at the thick bearskin rug in front of the fire. Alaric obeyed. He sank down, legs folded beneath him, snow still melting from his hair. The firelight painted every ridge and scar gold. He looked like a war god brought low, and still too beautiful to be real. I stayed by the door, arms crossed, claws digging into my own forearms to keep from doing something stupid. Kale climbed into Alaric's lap like he belonged there, opened the kit, and began dabbing salve on the worst of the burns with fierce concentration. Alaric didn't flinch once. His eyes never left me. This one's deep, Kale informed him. Mama says deep ones need kisses. He leaned forward and planted a sticky toddler kiss on a burn across Alaric's ribs. Something inside my chest shattered. Alaric's throat worked. He closed his eyes for a long moment, then opened them again, wetter than before. Your mama is very wise, he said hoarsely. Kale nodded, satisfied, then wriggled down and announced, bath time. You smell like smoke. He darted off toward the adjoining bathing chamber, already turning faucets with the confidence of a child who had never been told no in his life. Steam billowed out. Alaric stayed on his knees, staring after our son like he was a miracle he was terrified would vanish. I finally spoke. Get up. He rose slowly, towering over me again now that Kale wasn't anchoring him to the floor. The bond pulsed between us, hot and hungry. You have until he finishes his bath, I said. Then you leave forever. Alaric's jaw flexed. No, I stepped closer, close enough that the heat of his skin kissed mine through my armor. You don't get to say my name like that. You don't get to look at him like he's salvation. You threw us away. I know. His voice cracked. I live with it every second. Not good enough. I reached up and gripped the back of his neck, claws pricking skin, and yanked his forehead to mine. Feel this, I hissed. Feel the bond you tried to kill. It's still here. It always will be. And every day you wake up without us is a day the goddess lets you suffer for what you did. His breath shuddered against my lips. Then let me suffer here, on my knees, in your shadow. Anywhere you'll have me. I laughed, low and bitter. You think I'm that merciful? No, he whispered. I think you're that cruel, and I deserve it. The sound of splashing came from the bathing chamber. Kale's bright voice singing a nonsense song about wolves and stars. Alaric's eyes flicked toward it, naked longing written across every line of his face. I released him and stepped back. Bath, I said coldly. Then you're gone. He nodded once and walked toward the archway, every step leaving wet footprints on my marble. I watched the play of muscle across his back, the way the old claiming mark at the base of his neck glowed faintly silver, answering mine. Goddess damn him. Goddess damn me. I followed. The bathing chamber was a cavern of black stone and starlight. An underground hot spring fed the massive sunken pool. Steam curled like spirits. Kale had already stripped and cannonballed in, shrieking with delight. Alaric paused at the edge, uncertain. Kale surfaced, hair plastered to his forehead. Come on, Daddy, it's warm. Alaric looked at me, waiting for permission. I gave him nothing. He stepped down into the water anyway. The moment he was chest deep, Kale launched himself at him. Alaric caught him instinctively, lifting him high so he could kick and squeal. Water sheeted off them both. I stayed on the top step, arms folded, trying to ignore the way Alaric's throat worked every time Kale called him Daddy, trying to ignore the way my body remembered his hands, They played until Kale's eyelids drooped. Alaric carried him out wrapped in a thick towel, cradling him against his chest like he was made of glass. I took my son without a word, dried him, dressed him in soft sleeping clothes. Kale was asleep before his head hit the pillow in the adjoining nursery. I closed the door softly. Alaric stood in the middle of my bedroom, dripping, towel knotted low around his hips. Firelight flickered over every ridge of muscle, every scar, every place I used to trace with my tongue. The silence stretched, thick and dangerous. He broke first. "I can't leave him," he said quietly. "I won't. You don't have a choice." "Then kill me." He spread his arms, offering his throat. "Because walking away again will kill me slower, and I'd rather it be your claws." I crossed the room in 3 strides and shoved him hard. He hit the wall with a thud, towel slipping lower. "Don't tempt me." His eyes flashed gold. "Then stop pretending you don't feel it too." I snarled and fisted his hair, slamming his head back against the stone. He groaned, hips jerking involuntarily. The bond ignited. Suddenly, we were teeth and claws and 3 years of rage. I ripped the towel away. He tore at my armor with desperate hands until leather and steel rained to the floor. Skin on skin. Finally, he lifted me, spun, and pinned me to the wall with his hips. I wrapped my legs around his waist, nails raking down his back hard enough to draw blood. His mouth found the claiming mark on my shoulder and bit down, hard. I screamed into his throat as pleasure and pain detonated through the bond, white hot and vicious. We didn't make it to the bed. He took me right there against the wall. Brutal, perfect strokes that punished and worshipped in the same breath. My claws scored his shoulders. His hand fisted my hair, arching my neck so he could lick the tears I refused to shed. I came with his name on my tongue like a curse. He followed seconds later, burying himself deep and howling into my skin, the sound muffled against my throat. We slid to the floor in a tangle of limbs and heaving breaths. For a long moment, the only sound was the crackle of the fire and the storm outside. Then, reality slammed back in. I shoved him off me and scrambled for my discarded dagger. He didn't fight when I pressed the silver blade to his throat. "Get out," I panted. Alaric looked up at me, eyes glowing, lips swollen, blood trickling from where I'd marked him fresh. "Never," he said simply. I pressed harder. A thin line of crimson welled. He smiled, slow and feral. "I'll crawl through every circle of hell before I leave either of you again." The dagger trembled in my hand. From the nursery came a sleepy little voice. "Mama, I had a bad dream." I dropped the blade. Alaric rose, unashamedly naked and still half hard, and walked past me to the nursery door. He looked back once. "Let me hold him," he said softly. "Just until he falls asleep again. Then I'll go if that's what you truly want." I couldn't speak. He disappeared inside. I stood there, shaking, covered in his scent and my own weakness. Minutes later, I found them in the nursery. Alaric sat in the rocking chair, Kale curled trustingly against his bare chest, both of them asleep. Moonlight painted them silver and black. Father and son. The sight broke something open inside me I'd thought long dead. I turned away before the tears came. Outside the window, the storm finally began to quiet. But inside my keep, the real storm was only beginning. And tomorrow, when the sun rose, I would have to decide whether to chain the wolf at my feet, or let him burn the rest of the world down with me. Chapter 4. Kneel, my king. The storm died before dawn, leaving the world hushed and glittering under fresh snow. I never slept. I stood on the balcony outside my chambers, wrapped in a thick black wolf pelt, watching the horizon turn from ink to pearl. Behind me, through the open archway, Alaric still sat in the rocking chair with Kale asleep on his chest. The fire had burned low. Embers painted them in soft, treacherous gold. Every breath I took tasted like him. Every heartbeat echoed with the memory of his voice. I'll crawl through every circle of hell. I wanted to hate him for it. I hated that I couldn't. Footsteps soft, deliberate in the stone behind me. He had laid Kale in the little bed and tucked the furs around him with the same hands that once dragged me past the border stones. Now those hands hesitated at the threshold. "I gave you until sunrise," I said without turning. "I know." His voice was rough from disuse and unshed tears. "I'm not asking for more time. I'm asking for the terms. I faced him then. He had found a pair of loose black trousers, somewhere probably from the guard store's end. Nothing else. The firelight and the cold dawn fought over the plains of his chest. The fresh marks I'd left on his skin last night stood out livid against the older scars. He looked like ruin and redemption in the same breath. Terms, I repeated, tasting the word like poison. You think this is a negotiation? No. He took one step onto the balcony, then another, until the frost-kissed air stood between us like a blade. I think it's penance. He dropped to his knees, not dramatically, not for show. He simply folded, tall frame settling into the snow, until his dark head was level with my waist. Palms open on his thighs, neck bared. The king of Ironfang knelt in my kingdom, barefoot in the snow, and waited. Something ancient and vicious purred inside my chest. I circled him slowly, boots crunching. You once told an entire pack I was unfit to stand at your side, I said, voice low. Now you kneel in mine. Tell me, Alaric, does pride taste different from down there? He didn't flinch. It tastes like ash. It has for 3 years. I stopped in front of him. The wind lifted strands of his hair. I wanted to fist them until he bled. I wanted to stroke them until he broke. Both desires terrified me. You want terms, I said. Here they are. I leaned down until my lips brushed the shell of his ear. You will swear a blood oath to strike kingdom. Not to me, never again to me, but to the crown I wear and the son you abandoned. You will lay your broken kingdom at my feet. Every warrior, every resource, every breath you have left belongs to us now. You will serve as my general, my blade, my shadow. You will sleep outside my door if I command it. You will watch me rule and never forget why. I straightened. And every time you look at our son, you will remember the night you called him weak, before he was even born. Silence. Then he bowed lower, forehead touching the frost at my feet. I accept, he whispered against the snow. All of it. Carve it into my bones if you want. Just let me stay near him, near both of you. My hands shook inside the pelt. I had dreamed of this moment for 1,000 nights, dreamed of his pride in pieces, his golden eyes begging. Now that it was here, victory felt like swallowing broken glass. Stand up, I said. He rose slowly, towering again, but the arrogance was gone. Only raw honesty remained, and it was worse. I stepped closer until the heat of him thawed the air between us. If you ever raise a hand or a voice against what is mine again, I will not exile you. I let my claws lengthen, resting them lightly against the pulse in his throat. I will end you slowly, and I will make Kale watch so he learns what happens to wolves who betray their blood. His eyes closed. A tremor ran through him, not fear, relief. I welcome the lesson, he said. I stared at him for a long moment, searching for the lie. There was none. I dropped my hand. Then it begins today. At moonrise you will kneel in the great hall and speak the oath before every wolf who once watched you throw me away. They will see their king brought low, and they will learn who holds the leash now. A ghost of a smile touched his mouth, bitter, odd, reverent. As my queen commands. The words slid down my spine like heated silk. I hated how much I liked them. Behind us, small feet pattered across stone. Kale appeared in the doorway, rubbing sleepy eyes, silver hair sticking up in every direction. Mama, I'm hungry, he announced, then spotted Alaric and beamed. Daddy, you stayed. He ran straight into Alaric's legs and hugged them fiercely. Alaric's face fractured. He dropped to one knee again, this time, willingly, joyfully, and gathered Kale close, pressing a kiss to the top of his head like he was afraid the child would vanish. I watched them, throat tight, heart a battlefield. Kale looked up at me over Alaric's shoulder, eyes bright. Is Daddy coming to breakfast? I met Alaric's gaze, gold on silver. Surrender and defiance in equal measure. Yes, I said. My voice did not shake. Daddy is coming to breakfast. Kale cheered. Alaric rose with our son in his arms, and for one heartbeat the three of us stood in the pale dawn, light fractured. Impossible, bound by blood and moon, and something neither of us had earned yet. I turned away first. Clean yourself up, I told Alaric. You look like a corpse. He laughed, actually laughed, low and broken and real. As my queen commands, he repeated softer this time. I walked inside without looking back. but I felt his eyes on me every step, burning like brands. Tonight he would kneel in front of my entire kingdom and hand me his crown on bended knee. And tomorrow I would decide whether to crush what was left of him, or let him rise at my side and burn the world together. The moon hung low on the horizon, waiting. So did I. Chapter 5. The Price of Mercy. Moonrise came too quickly. The great hall of Strike Keep was packed to the rafters. Every warrior, every rogue, every wolf who had once been cast out and found a home here, stood shoulder to shoulder beneath the silver banners. Torches hissed, drums beat a slow funeral rhythm. I sat on the obsidian throne at the top of the dais, Kale on my lap, in ceremonial silver armor far too large for him. He kept swinging his little boots, fascinated by the way the torchlight fractured across the moonstone inlays. He had no idea what was coming. Alaric waited at the foot of the steps, flanked by two of my deadliest enforcers. He had bathed, shaved, and dressed in the black and silver uniform of a strike general, my colors not his. The Iron Fang crest had been ripped from his chest hours ago. The raw threads looked like a fresh wound. The hall fell silent when I rose. I wore the full regalia of the Silver Queen, a sleeveless gown of midnight silk, beneath armor of moonforged steel, crown of crescent silver resting heavy on my brow. My hair fell in a river of white fire down my back. Kale reached up and touched the crown. "Pretty mama." I kissed his forehead, then handed him to his nursemaid at the side of the throne. He went willingly, waving at Alaric like this was a festival and not a public execution of pride. I descended the steps until I stood one above Alaric, close enough that every wolf in the hall could see the height difference, the symbolism, the reversal. "Speak the oath," I commanded. Alaric dropped to both knees without hesitation. The impact echoed. His voice rang clear, steady, unbreakable. "By moon and blood and ancient law, I, Alaric of Iron Fang, surrender my crown, my name, and my kingdom. From this night forward I am no king. I am blade and shield, to Strike Kingdom, to Queen Alara the Unbroken, and to Prince Kale, heir of silver and iron. My life is forfeit if I ever betray this vow. Let the goddess strike me down if I lie." A ripple of shock rolled through the hall. Some of my oldest wolves, those who still remembered the night I crawled, bleeding across the border, bared their throats in approval. Others stared stunned that any alpha, let alone the infamous Alaric, would speak those words. I drew the silver ceremonial dagger from my belt. "Seal it." He tilted his head, offering his throat without flinching. I sliced a shallow line just above his collarbone. Blood welled, bright and perfect. I pressed 2 fingers into the wound, then painted a vertical line down his forehead to the bridge of his nose, the ancient mark of a sworn oathbreaker turned oathkeeper. He never blinked. I raised my blood-stained fingers to the hall. "Witnessed," I declared. The drums stopped. Silence crashed like a wave. Then my wolves howled, one voice, then 100, then 1,000, until the rafters shook and the torches guttered in the wind of their breath. Alaric stayed on his knees, eyes locked on mine, waiting for whatever came next. I leaned down, voice for him alone. "Welcome to the bottom, General. Try not to drown." A flicker of something fierce and grateful crossed his face. I turned to leave. That was when the screaming started outside the walls, not the triumphant howls of my pack. Real screaming, human child agony. The great doors burst open. A runner staggered in, half his face burned away by silver fire. "My queen poison rogue attack on the Eastern Camp's children." The words fractured in his throat as he collapsed. Everything slowed. I looked at Kale, safe on the dais. Then, at Alaric, still kneeling in his own blood. "Poison. Children?" The Eastern Camps were where the youngest orphans slept. A roar built in my chest that had nothing to do with triumph. I vaulted the railing, landing in a crouch beside the dying runner. "Who?" I snarled. He coughed blood Iron Fang colors. Said they were venging their king. The hall went deathly still. Every eye turned to Alaric. His face drained of color. He rose slowly, horror dawning. "No," he whispered. "I gave no such order." But the damage was done. My wolves growled, shifting restlessly, claws scraping stone. Some began to circle him. I stood. The temperature in the hall plummeted. "Lock him in the lower cells," I said. voice flat and lethal. Silver chains, no visitors. Alaric didn't resist when my enforcer seized him. He met my eyes one last time, pleading, devastated. Take him. They dragged him away. He didn't fight. I turned to my war council. Ready the healers. Ready the army. We ride for the eastern camps at once. I strode past the throne, past my son who was now crying because the room felt wrong, past the blood still wet on the floor. As I reached the doors, Kale's small voice cut through the chaos. Mama, Daddy didn't do it. I smelled the bad wolves. They weren't his. I froze. Every wolf in the hall heard him. 3-year-olds do not lie about scent. I looked back at the empty space where Alaric had been dragged away. Then at my son, tears on his cheeks, but chin lifted, defiant. The truth hit like a warhammer. Someone had used Iron Fang colors to frame him. Someone wanted me to destroy the one wolf who had just sworn his life to me. Someone inside my own kingdom. I knelt, cupped Kale's face. You're certain, little star? He nodded hard. Daddy smells like snow and pine. The bad wolves smelled like lies. I kissed his forehead, fierce and swift. Then we ride together. And we find the liars. I rose and bellowed to the hall. Release General Alaric. Arm him. He rides at my side. The chains had barely hit the floor in the lower cells when Alaric appeared at the top of the stairs. Shirtless, bleeding, eyes blazing. He dropped to one knee again, this time in the middle of my war council. Not submission, but partnership. Command me, my queen. The bond between us flared, hot and vicious and alive. I extended my hand. He took it. Together we walked out into the night, silver and iron side by side. While behind us the traitor's scent still lingered like smoke. Someone had just made the worst mistake of their life. And mercy, it turned out, had a price after all. Chapter 6. Moon blessed and broken. We rode through the night like twin storms. I took the lead on my black warmar, silver cloak snapping behind me like a battle standard. Alaric rode at my left flank close enough that our knees brushed with every stride, his massive charcoal destrier keeping perfect pace. 500 of my best wolves fanned out behind us, torches hissing in the wind, claws ready. Kale rode with me, wrapped in furs against my chest, small hands fisted in my mare's mane. He had refused to be left behind. I can help, Mama, he'd said, chin trembling, but voice steady. I know the bad smell. No one argued with the prince. The eastern camps lay in the shadow of the broken Fang Ridge. We smelled the poison long before we saw the fire's bitter nightshade and silverroot. A blend meant to kill pups slowly and painfully. My blood turned to ice and fire at the same time. We crested the ridge at full gallop. The sight below wrenched a snarl from my throat. Tents burned. Bodies of my youngest, some no older than 5, lay twisted in the snow, mouths flecked with foam. Healers ran between them, frantic, silver knives flashing as they tried to cut poisoned flesh away before it reached the heart. And in the center of it all stood a single black banner bearing the old Iron Fang crest. Alaric made a sound like a dying animal. I was off my horse before it stopped moving. Kale handed to the nearest guard. I strode through the carnage, wolves parting for me like the sea. A little girl no more than 6, like convulsing near my feet. Silverroot had turned her lips blue. I dropped to my knees, pressed my palm to her chest. Moonlight flared from my skin, trying to burn the poison out, but it was too deep. She went still. I screamed. The sound tore the night open. Every torch flared white. The ground cracked beneath me. Alaric was suddenly there, hand on my shoulder, voice ragged. He pointed. At the edge of the camp, half hidden by smoke, a pup still breathed, barely. A boy, 7 winters at most. His tiny body arched with seizures. Kale wriggled free of the guard and ran to us. He's got the worst smell, my son whispered, pointing at the boy. It's inside him. I reached for the child, and stopped. The poison had spread too far. Moonlight could slow it, but not stop it. Not without an anchor of pure alpha blood to bind the cure. My blood was silver blessed, but it wasn't enough. Alaric's was iron and king. I looked at him. He was already kneeling, rolling up his sleeve, baring his forearm without a word. Do it, he said. I didn't hesitate. I slashed my dagger across his wrist deep. Blood welled, dark and rich. Then I cut my own palm. Our blood mingled on the snow, silver and crimson twisting together like destiny. I pressed our joined hands to the boy's mouth. Drink, I commanded, pushing power into the words. The child latched on instinctively, small fangs piercing Alaric's skin. Alaric didn't flinch. He cradled the boy's head gently, letting him take as much as he needed. Moonlight and shadow poured from our joined hands into the pup's body. The poison recoiled, hissing like a living thing, then burned away in threads of black smoke. One by one, the other healers saw what we were doing. They began dragging the worst cases to us. We didn't move for hours. Alaric and I knelt in the snow, wrists locked together, blood flowing freely, feeding life back into children who had never known anything but exile. Every time a pup opened their eyes and whispered queen or general, something inside both of us fractured a little more. By the time the last child breathed, steady and deep, dawn was bleeding across the sky. Alaric's face was ashen. He'd given too much blood. His hand trembled in mine. I looked down at our joined wrists, still bleeding, still bound. Then I looked at the children sleeping safely around us, wrapped in cloaks and furs, and I made a choice. I lifted his wrist to my lips and licked the wound closed, sealing it with a flicker of moonlight. His breath caught. I met his eyes. You saved them, I said quietly. You saved my pups. Our pups, he corrected, voice raw. I didn't argue. Kale crawled into Alaric's lap, exhausted, and promptly fell asleep against his chest. Alaric's arms closed around our son like they'd never let go. I stood, legs shaking from blood loss and something fiercer. Around us, my wolves watched in stunned silence. I raised my voice so every survivor could hear. From this night forward, there are no Iron Fang orphans, no strike orphans, only our children. Anyone who harms them answers to both their queen and their general. A low growl of approval rippled through the ranks. Alaric looked up at me, eyes shining with something too bright to be tears. I extended my hand. He took it. We rose together, covered in blood and ash and the weight of what we'd just done. But when we turned to survey the wreckage, something caught my eye. A scrap of black cloth, half burned, pinned beneath a fallen beam. I pulled it free. The Iron Fang crest had been crudely altered, stitched over, with a serpent coiled around a broken crown. A sigil I had never seen before. Alaric's face went very still. That's not my banner, he said. That's older, forbidden. I crushed the cloth in my fist. Then someone just declared war on both of us, I said. Alaric's grip tightened on my hand. Let them come, he said, voice like a vow carved in stone. Behind us, the first rays of sunlight struck the snow and turned our mingled blood to molten gold. And for the first time in 3 years, the bond between us didn't feel like chains. It felt like a blade being forged. Chapter 7. The Prophecy of 2 Crowns. The serpent sigil burned in my fist the entire ride home. We reached Strike Keep at dusk the following day, exhausted, blood-crusted, triumphant, and furious. The children had been carried in wagons, wrapped in blankets, alive because 2 enemies had bled together to keep them that way. I wanted answers. I wanted throats. But first, I wanted the truth locked in the oldest vault beneath the keep. Alaric walked beside me down the spiral of torchlit stairs that led to the forbidden library, an iron door, sealed by 3 bloodlocks. Only the reigning monarch could open it. I pressed my palm to the center rune. Silver light flared. The door groaned inward. Alaric hesitated on the threshold. I was never allowed in here, he said quietly. Not even as king. You're not a king anymore, I reminded him. You're my blade. Blades go where I point them. He followed without another word. The air inside was cold and dry, thick with the scent of ancient parchment and moon-silver dust. Shelves towered 3 stories high, every volume bound in black leather or wolf hide. In the center stood a single obsidian table and a crystal case that glowed faintly. I went straight to it. Inside lay the Codex of 2 Crowns prophecy, older than any kingdom, written in blood that still shimmered. Alaric's breath caught when he saw the open page. Across the vellum, illuminated in silver and crimson ink, was a drawing no living wolf was ever meant to see. A woman wreathed in moonlight, a man crowned in iron and shadow. Between them, a child with one silver eye and one black, holding a broken crown in one hand and a serpent in the other. Beneath it, the words, "When silver and iron bleed as one, the child of two crowns shall rise. He will either bind the realms in eternal peace, or shatter them until the moon herself falls." Alaric read it aloud, voice barely above a whisper. When he reached the final line, his hand found the edge of the table, as if the floor had tilted. "Kale," he said just that. Our son's name cracked in half. I stared at the illustration of the child. The artist had captured the exact tilt of Kale's mouth when he smiled. Someone had known, centuries ago. Someone had seen our son. And now, someone was trying to kill him before he could fulfill or destroy the prophecy. I closed the codex with a snap that echoed like a gunshot. "Who else knows this exists?" I asked. Alaric's face was stone. "Only the royal bloodlines. And the high circle of elders. They swore to keep it buried. Then one of them just broke that oath." I turned to leave. He caught my wrist gently, but I still felt the tremor in his fingers. "Ilara," his voice was raw. "If this is real, if he is the child of the prophecy, every kingdom, every rogue pack, every ancient horror that sleeps under these mountains will come for him. For us." I met his eyes, gold on silver. Terror and resolve braided so tight, neither of us could tell whose was whose anymore. "Then we make sure they choke on us first," I said. He nodded once. The grip on my wrist became a vow. We emerged from the vault to find the entire war council waiting in the corridor, faces grim. My spymaster stepped forward and knelt. "My queen." "We caught the traitor who flew the serpent banner." He tossed a bound wolf at my feet. I recognized him instantly. Ragnar, once Alaric's beta, a wolf I had welcomed in to strike as a refugee after Ironfang fell. Ragnar spat blood and laughed. "Too late, Silver Queen. The circle has already convened. They know what your whelp is. They know what he'll become." Alaric went predator still. "You poisoned children," he said, voice deceptively soft. "For politics." Ragnar's grin widened. "For survival. One child dies, or every pack on the continent burns. The prophecy is clear one way or another. The boy ends kingdoms." I stepped forward until my shadow swallowed him. "Then let the first kingdom to fall be the one that raised its hand against my son." I looked at Alaric. He didn't wait for the order. One clawed hand closed around Ragnar's throat. Bone snapped. The body hit the stone with a wet thud. Silence. I turned to the council. "No prisoners. No mercy. Anyone who wears the serpent dies screaming. Spread the word." They scattered to obey. Alaric stared at the corpse, breathing hard. I touched his arm. "Look at me." He did. The rage in his eyes was a mirror of my own. "They want our son," I said. "They will have to go through both his parents." Something fierce and possessive flared across his face. "Then they die tired," he answered. We walked side by side back to the royal wing. The bond between us no longer tugged like a chain. It thrummed like a war drum. Kale was asleep in the nursery, curled beneath a mountain of furs, one small fist clutching the stuffed wolf Alaric had carved for him the night before. We stood over the bed and watched him breathe. "Two crowns, one cradle." Alaric spoke first, voice rough with the weight of centuries. "I will burn every archive, every elder, every kingdom that tries to touch him." I rested my hand over his heart. It pounded beneath my palm like it was trying to reach me. "So will I." Outside the windows, the moon rose full and cold. Somewhere in the distance, serpents were already moving through the dark. Let them come. We were ready. Chapter 8. The Other Woman. The serpent did not wait for us to hunt it. It came to our gates at dawn, a single rider beneath a white banner of parley. A woman, tall, raven-haired, draped in the black and crimson colors of the fallen Ironfang court. The royal cloak Alaric once wore now hung from her shoulders like a claim. She rode alone into the courtyard, flanked by 20 of my archers with silver arrows trained on her heart. I stood on the high steps with Alaric at my right and Kale hidden safely behind the inner walls. The morning was bitter cold. Our breath hung between us like ghosts. She dismounted with lethal grace and removed her helm. Beautiful, savage, familiar. "Livia." Alaric's breath fractured beside me. One word slipped out, cracked and bleeding. "No." Livia smiled, slow and poisonous. "Hello, my king," she called, voice carrying to every wolf on the battlements. "Did you miss me?" The courtyard erupted in murmurs. My wolves knew the stories. Livia of House Vargalarix, chosen beta after Ragnar's death, rumored to have warmed his bed and his war councils in equal measure after I was exiled. Alaric took one involuntary step forward. I caught his wrist in an iron grip. "Explain," I said, low enough only he heard the snarl beneath. His pulse hammered against my fingers. "She was never my mate, never my anything. I thought she died when Iron Fang fell." Livia's eyes cold amber found mine. "Queen Ilara," she purred, dipping into a mockery of a curtsy. "The moon goddess has been unkind, hasn't she? Casting out a weak Luna, only to watch a murderer steal a throne." She opened her cloak. Beneath it, low on her collarbone, glowed a fresh claiming mark, Alaric's mark, the twin to the one he had once given me. My vision tunneled red. Alaric made a broken sound. "That's impossible. I never—" Livia laughed, bright and vicious. "You did. The night Iron Fang burned. You were drunk on grief and silverate wine. You begged for comfort, my king. You begged for me." She lifted a small crystal vial. On a chain inside swirled dark liquid and a single black hair, blood-binding potion. Old forbidden magic. My claws lengthened. The bond inside my chest howled in betrayal. Alaric dropped to his knees right there on the stone steps, in full view of both armies. Ilara, his voice cracked like ice under a boot. "Look at me." I couldn't breathe. Livia stepped closer, voice silk over steel. "I am his true Luna now. The elders of the High Circle recognize me. Half the surviving Iron Fang packs ride behind me. Surrender the child of the prophecy, and we leave in peace. Refuse." She smiled. "And we take him over your corpses." The threat landed like a blade between my ribs. Kale, they had come for my son. Alaric rose slowly, placing himself between me and Livia, shoulders squared. "You will not touch him," he said, every word carved from winter. "You will not touch her. That mark is a lie forged in blood magic. I feel only one bond." He turned, seized my hand, and slammed it over his heart so hard, the entire courtyard heard the impact. "This one, always this one." Then he faced Livia again. "You want my allegiance? Earn it the old way." He drew the silver sword from his belt and threw it clattering to the stones at her feet. "Single combat here now. Winner claims the Iron Fang remnant and the right to stand at the Silver Queen's side." Gasps rippled through both sides. Livia's smile never wavered. "Accepted." They cleared a circle in the courtyard. Wolves formed a living ring, snarling, restless. I wanted to stop it. Wanted to rip her throat out myself. But Alaric met my eyes one last time. "Trust me," he said. Just that. I gave the smallest nod. They fought like demons. No shifting, steel only. Blood sprayed across the frost within the first 3 heartbeats. Livia was fast, vicious, every strike aimed to maim. Alaric fought like a man who had nothing left to lose and everything to prove. Minutes bled into eternity. Then Livia fainted high and drove her dagger toward his throat. Alaric caught her wrist, twisted, and slammed her to her knees. His sword pressed against the false claiming mark. "Yield," he growled. She spat blood in his face. He looked up at me at the place where the true bond blazed white-hot between us and pressed harder. The mark on her skin blackened and flaked away like ash, revealing unscarred skin beneath. The blood binding shattered with an audible crack that made every wolf flinch. Livia screamed as the magic recoiled, eating her from the inside. Alaric dropped her like refuse. He turned to her waiting soldiers. "Your false Luna is finished. Go home or kneel." One by one, they knelt. He walked straight through them to me, blood streaming from a dozen wounds, and fell to his knees again at my feet, not submission, but offering. The courtyard held its breath. I took the fallen Iron Fang cloak from Livia's trembling fingers, tore the serpent's sigil from it, and flung the remnants into the nearest brazier. Flames devoured it. Then I placed my hand on Alaric's bowed head. "Rise, General," I said, loud enough for every wolf to hear. "The only Luna this king ever had stands before him. And she forgives nothing, but she keeps what is hers." Alaric rose, eyes blazing, and the bond between us sang so fiercely, the torches guttered. Behind us, Livia was dragged away in chains, still screaming about prophecies and serpents. But her screams were drowned out by the unified howl of two armies. Strike and Ironfang together, accepting their queen and the wolf who had finally earned the right to stand at her side. The war had just become personal, and the real serpent was still out there. Chapter 9: Deathbed Promises. The victory lasted exactly 6 hours. We were still in the Great Hall, wolves from both kingdoms, drinking and howling under the same banners, for the first time in years, when the arrow found me. It came through the high stained glass window, a sliver of black steel tipped with nightshade and serpent venom. It punched through my armor just below the ribs and buried itself to the fletching. The hall froze mid. I looked down at the shaft protruding from my side, surprised at how little it hurt at first. Then the poison hit. Fire, ice, knives made of starlight. I dropped. Alaric caught me before I hit the stone. The goblet in his hand shattered, wine and blood mingling on the floor. Alara, look at me. His voice came from very far away. I tried to focus on his face, but the world was tilting, colors bleeding into silver and black. Kale's terrified scream cut through the haze. Mama! Guards swarmed. Healers shoved tables aside. Someone was shouting for the antidote that did not exist. Alaric carried me himself, cradling me against his chest like I weighed nothing, running, down corridors, upstairs, boots pounding so hard the torches flickered out behind us. He burst into the royal chambers and laid me on the bed as though I were made of glass. The poison spread in black veins across my stomach, curling toward my heart like serpent fingers. Healers circled, faces pale. One pressed a glowing hand to the wound and shook her head. Too deep, the nightshade has reached the blood bond. Only a full transfer from her true mate can slow it. And even then, Alaric didn't wait for the rest. He slashed his own wrist with his claws deep, brutal, and pressed the bleeding wound to my lips. Drink, he commanded, voice cracking. That's an order, damn you. I was already slipping. The room blurred. The bond between us dimmed like a candle in wind. He climbed onto the bed, cradling my head in his lap, forcing his blood between my teeth. Stay with me, he snarled, tears cutting clean tracks through the blood on his face. You do not get to leave me twice. You hear me, Alara. I swallowed once, twice. The taste of him, iron and pine and desperation, burned all the way down. The black veins slowed, but did not stop. Kale was suddenly there, small hands clutching my arm, sobbing. Mama, don't go. Please don't go. His tears fell on my skin and glowed silver where they touched. Alaric's eyes met mine over our son's head, wild, terrified, ancient. He understood the same moment I did. Only one thing could anchor me now. He bowed his head until his forehead rested against mine, both of us shaking. Take it, he whispered. Take everything, my strength, my years, my crown, that never mattered. Take my life if you have to. Just live. Then he tilted his head and bared his throat, the same throat he had offered in surrender. In combat, in oath, now offering it in sacrifice. Do it, he said. Mark me back. Complete the bond both ways. Tie my soul to yours so death can't have you without dragging me too. The room went still. A true double claiming had not been performed in 1,000 years. It bound to wolves so completely that if one died, the other followed within hours. It was forbidden for exactly that reason. I looked at Kale's terrified face. I looked at Alaric's eyes, gold, steady, unafraid, and I chose. My fangs lengthened, weak, trembling, but enough. I sank them into the strong column of his throat, right over the place where his pulse thundered for me alone. He ground relief, pain, surrender, and the bond exploded. Silver and iron crashed together like colliding stars. Power flooded me, fierce and blinding. His strength, his heartbeat, his very life poured into my veins. Knitting flesh, burning poison, anchoring me to the world with chains forged of his own soul. The black veins reversed, retreating, dissolving into nothing. I pulled back, gasping. The wound in my side, sealed with a flare of white fire. Alaric swayed, suddenly pale as death, but his arms never loosened around me. Across his throat now glowed my mark, silver, luminous, unbreakable, mirroring the one he had given me years ago. The bond sang between us, no longer a tether, a circle, complete, whole. Kale flung himself onto the bed, burrowing between us, crying and laughing at once. I held them both so tightly, my arms shook. Alaric pressed his forehead to mine again, breath ragged. "You absolute fool," he whispered, voice raw with wonder and fury and love too big to name. "You almost died on me. You gave me no choice," I whispered back. He laughed once broken, incredulous, alive. Then the doors burst open again. My spymaster knelt, face grim. The assassin was caught alive. "My queen, he bears the serpent, and he carries a message from the high circle." He held up a scroll, sealed in black wax. I took it with hands that no longer trembled. The words were written in blood. "The child of 2 crowns will kneel, or he will burn. You have until the next blood moon. Refuse, and every kingdom falls." Beneath the threat, a single line in ancient script. "The moon goddess herself will not save you this time." Alaric read it over my shoulder. His arms tightened around me and Kale until I felt his heart beat through both our ribs. "Let them come," he said, quiet and terrible. "They'll find the circle is closed now." I looked at the mark, glowing on his throat, my mark. Then, at our sun safe between us. Then, at the moon just beginning to rise outside the window, already tinged red. "So be it," I said. The war had a deadline now, and we had everything to lose. Chapter 10. 1 Kingdom, 2 Thrones. The blood moon was 14 nights away. 14 nights to turn to broken kingdoms into one unbreakable realm. 14 nights to prepare for the High Circle's war. 14 nights to teach our son what it truly means to wear 2 crowns. We did not waste a single hour. The great hall became a war room. Maps bled across every table. Forges rang day and night. Wolves who once snarled at each other over old borders now trained shoulder to shoulder under Alaric's command and my law. And every evening, when the torches burned low and Kale finally slept, Alaric and I stood on the highest balcony and watched the moon swell fatter, redder, hungrier. Tonight was the 13th night. Tomorrow, the circle would come. I wore the full battle regalia of the Silver Queen, black armor chased with moon silver, the crescent crown fused to my brow. Alaric stood beside me in matching black, the new crest we had designed together blazing across his chest, a silver crescent entwined with an iron crown, bound by a circle of stars. 1 kingdom, 2 thrones, 1 heartbeat. He broke the silence first. "They'll demand I kneel to you publicly again," he said, voice low, "in front of every elder, every alpha, every wolf who ever called me king. They think it will break me one final time." I turned to him. Wind whipped our cloaks together, silver and black threads tangling like fate. "And will it?" He met my eyes, steady as winter stone. "It will free me." He sank to one knee, not forced, not penance, but choice. Right there on the cold stone of the balcony, beneath the bloated moon. I, Alaric, once king of Ironfang, lay my crown, my name, my pride, and my life at the feet of Elora, the unbroken, queen of strike, and now of all united packs. From this night until my last, I am hers to command, hers to keep, hers to burn if she chooses. The moon is my witness. His voice carried on the wind, down into the courtyard where thousands had already gathered for tomorrow's ceremony. They heard every word. He bowed his head and waited. My throat closed. I had dreamed of this moment 1,000 different ways, most of them involving blood and screaming. Never like this. Never with love so fierce it felt like grief. I stepped forward and placed my hand on his bowed head. "Rise, my king," I said, loud enough for the wind to carry it to every corner of the kingdom. "Your queen has need of you beside her, not beneath her." He rose slowly, eyes shining with something too bright to be merely moonlight. I took the new crown from the velvet cushion a guard had carried Upa twin to mine. Iron and silver fused into one perfect circle and set it on his brow myself. The courtyard below exploded into howls that shook the mountains. 2 thrones, side by side, equal height, equal weight. Alaric's fingers found mine and squeezed once hard. Grounding, real. Inside the bond, I felt the last wall between us crumble into dust. Later, in the quiet before dawn, we stood in the nursery one final time. Kale slept curled around the stuffed wolf Alaric had carved, thumb in his mouth, Silver and black hair tousled across the pillow. Alaric's voice was barely sound. If tomorrow goes wrong, it won't. If it does, he insisted, turning to me, promise me you'll take him and run. The hidden passage under the moon pool. I pressed my fingers to his lips. Listen to me. I waited until his eyes locked on mine. There is no running anymore. There is only us. Together if we fall as one. If we rise as one. That is the vow we made when I marked you back. His breath shuddered. I took his hand and placed it over my heart, then laid mine over his. Feel that, 2 heartbeats, perfectly matched. That is the only kingdom I will ever fight for. He closed his eyes, forehead dropping to mine. Then let the circle come, he whispered. Let the moon bleed. Let the world end. I regret nothing. Outside, the blood moon crested the ridge, huge and crimson, bathing the United Kingdom in warning and promise. Inside, 3 wolves slept under one roof, Queen King, and the child who would either save or shatter everything. Tomorrow the High Circle would ride through our gates, demanding submission or war. They would find neither. They would find us. Whole, unbroken. Ready? Chapter 11. Blood Moon Rising. The blood moon hung above Strike Keep like a wound in the sky. At dawn the High Circle arrived. 12 ancient alphas on black destriers, cloaks stitched with every fallen kingdom, serpent sigils, glinting crimson. They rode through the open gates as though we had already surrendered. Behind them marched 10,000 warriors, wearing the colors of every pack that had ever bowed to their council. They expected submission. They found an army. Our united wolves lined the battlements and filled the courtyard 20 deep, silver and iron banners snapping side by side, shields locked, eyes burning with the same promise. Alaric and I waited on the dais that had been built overnight in the center of the courtyard, 2 thrones of equal height, carved from the same slab of obsidian. Between them, on a small cushion of white wolf fur, sat Kale in miniature armor, clutching a silver toy sword almost as big as he was. He waved when he saw us coming. The circle halted 10 paces away. Their leader, Elder Vorak, older than mountains, eyes milk-white with age and power, dismounted and walked forward alone. His voice rolled like distant thunder. Child of 2 crowns, he called, gaze fixed on Kale. Step forward and kneel. Accept the circle's guidance, and your parents may live as our honored prisoners. Refuse, and this kingdom burns before the moon sets. Silence so complete I could hear my own heartbeat. Kale looked up at me, then at Alaric. His little face was solemn, but his chin lifted exactly the way mine did when I was furious. He slid off the cushion and walked forward 3 years old, barefoot on cold stone, until he stood at the very edge of the dais. No, he said clearly. 1 word, small voice, unbreakable. Vorak's smile was thin and terrible. Then you all die. He raised his hand. 10,000 weapons rose in answer. Alaric and I moved at the same instant. We stepped in front of our son, shoulder to shoulder, hands clasped. The double bond flared between us so brightly, the air shimmered silver and black. Alaric spoke first, voice carrying to the farthest ranks. You want the child of prophecy. He drew his sword. Come and take him. I drew mine. Over our hearts, I finished. The circle hesitated. They had expected fear. They found defiance carved in flesh and blood. Vorak snarled and gave the signal. The first wave charged, and the blood moon answered. Silver fire erupted from my blade. Iron shadow exploded from Alaric's. The 2 forces met in midair and became something new, a storm of light and darkness that tore across the courtyard like a living thing. Our wolves roared and met the enemy head. The battle was brutal, beautiful, inevitable. Alaric fought like a man possessed, every swing a vow to the family he had once thrown away. I fought like the storm the goddess had forged the night she saved me. Together we carved a path straight to Vorak. Kale never left the dais. He stood on the cushion, small fists clenched, eyes glowing with the same storm that raged in our veins. When Vorak finally faced us, bleeding from a dozen wounds, he laughed. You still don't understand, he spat. The prophecy demands a sacrifice. 1 crown must break. He lunged it at us, but at Kale, Alaric intercepted, taking the elder's poisoned claw across his chest. Black veins spidered instantly across his skin. I screamed and drove my sword through Vorak's heart. The elder gasped, eyes wide, and crumbled to ash at our feet. The circle's army faltered. Alaric dropped to his knees, poison racing toward his heart. I fell with him, hands pressed to the wound, trying to burn it out with moonlight. It wasn't enough. He smiled through bloodied teeth. Looks like one crown does break, he rasped. Take care of him, my queen. Then his eyes began to dim. Kale's small voice cut through the chaos. No. Our son leaped from the dais, landed between us, and placed one tiny hand on Alaric's chest and one on mine. The blood moon above us pulsed once huge, impossible, alive. Power poured out of Kale like sunrise. Silver and iron light exploded from his palms, flooding Alaric's wound, burning the poison to nothing, knitting flesh and bone. The double bond blazed so brightly, every wolf on the battlefield dropped their weapons and shielded their eyes. When the light faded, Alaric breathed deep and steady, the wound gone. Kale swayed, suddenly pale and trembling. I caught him before he fell. Above us, the blood moon cracked down the center, an audible fracture that echoed like breaking chains. Crimson light poured through the wound in the sky and bathed the three of us in fire and forgiveness. The goddess's voice, the same voice that had saved me in the snow, rolled across the kingdom, ancient and final. The circle is complete. The child has chosen mercy over ruin, unity over dominion. Let the realms rise together, or not at all. The circle's remaining warriors dropped to their knees, one by one, until 10,000 wolves bowed beneath the broken moon. Alaric rose, lifted Kale into his arms, and turned to me. I took his free hand. Together, crowned and bleeding and whole, we faced our kingdom. One people, one future, one family. The blood moon healed above us, sealing shut like a scar. And somewhere, deep in the mountains, something ancient and far worse than the circle stirred in its sleep, drawn by the light of a prophecy fulfilled. But that was a war for another season. Tonight, under a healing moon, we stood unbroken, together, forever. Drop everything and binge this story right now. If you've ever been counted out, thrown away, told you were too small, too soft, too broken to matter, this one's for you. Watch the Luna they called weak come back with vengeance in her smile, and a crown forged from moonlight and wrath. Watch the Alpha King who exiled her learn exactly what too late feels like. Watch their 3-year-old son stare down an army and make the moon itself choose a side. Seasons 1 and 2 are complete and waiting. Enemy Stooliverse, redemption, revenge, prophecy, blood, and unbreakable family bonds, all wrapped in wolf shifter fury. Hit the subscribe button to be notified when a new one is live. Hit play, turn the volume up, and when you finish with tears in your eyes and fire in your chest, come find me and tell me whose side you're on. The Silver Queen is waiting. Don't keep her waiting long.